Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Grain Market Blast. It is Tuesday, the 9th of September, all day. You join myself and the glamorous goddess of grain herself, Angie Setzer, where Angie will be providing a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed in the space of session constitutes trading or investment advice, yada, yada, yada. Nothing here is an endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Pacey, or indeed the glamorous Angie Setzer. Whee! How are you doing?
Woohoo! I'm
You
good.
good?
I'm out of the office today, so I'm hoping everything works okay.
Well,
And
let's
this
be
will be
honest.
a
I
quick
can
one.
be in the office, and my
It still
space is
doesn't work.
set up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You just never know. So, but I'm sitting still. I'm
Spin the
not driving
wheel.
down the road, right? I am here. We'll see how it goes. So, happy Tuesday all day long. Biggest things I wanted to talk about today, and honestly, like I can only use the same market, different day, the bullet point so many times. So I guess I have to come up with something new to discuss. But the biggest thing I want to kind of look at today more than anything is just grain flow. And this has been something that I've been talking about for a while, that we've been focusing on for quite some time. But the elections in Buenos Aires over the weekend, I think, are going to shine a really interesting light on just what kind of supply availability we have left out of South America, and
Right.
how things are going to look as we move ahead when it comes to soybean movement and some of these other things. You saw Milei lose this there's an important election across much of Buenos Aires. There were several different elections or different things that were being held that were supposed to be kind of considered, at least, I'm not going to say a referendum on him, because I don't want to speak like I'm an expert on Argentina politics. That'd be weird. But at the very least, it was kind of thought to be a bit of a foresight, or a look at how Milei's policies are working, how they, because he's come in and brought his literal chainsaw with
Yeah, a
him.
literal chainsaw, not just a
Literally,
metaphorical one.
yes, he is a chainsaw dude. And basically we were kind of told that we were going to see these major structural changes take place. I'm old enough now that this is my second time that I've heard that an election in Argentina is going to completely change how Argentina approaches the agricultural world and the world in general. And now it's the second time that it could. Maybe, we're not sure. We'll see how the midterms at the end of October go. But obviously this wasn't as folks were expecting. They were anticipating kind of just a reinforcement of
Right.
Milei's policies, and they didn't get them. So you saw the peso collapse. It traded below at 1400 yesterday, which is the lowest that I can remember it trading. I'm not 100% sure on that. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, then that made farmers sell more, right? Because they received a 3% bump in their soybean value that they were getting. But no, not really. We did see exporter registrations bump up a little bit. There was some concern over shipments versus registrations. If some of these Argentine exporters are actually going to be able to get their hands on some of this supply, because the
Yeah.
farmer selling has been much slower. So there's just a lot of things there that'll be interesting, simply because, we've kind of thought, well, Argentina will help bridge this gap, between what is taking place, or, China doesn't have to use the U.S. beans because Argentina is going to step in. Well, probably not, because now you have this whole other, level of uncertainty. You're probably not going to see much in the way of significant farmer selling again, for a hot minute, just simply because if the midterm elections are, kind of a bad news for Milei, now you have 2 years of trying to figure out what the hell happens
Right.
next.
Yeah,
So,
exactly that.
so the farmers, it'll be interesting just to see what happens, simply because we've had so many of these ideas where, oh, Argentina is just going to completely change how they approach the market. It's going to be a free market system down there for them. They're going to be flowing bushels. They're going to grow. You're going to see expansion, yada, yada, yada. And now that comes into question there. Anything on that election, or anything that you're seeing that you think we should point out from a currency or any of
No,
that? No.
I think it's no, not really. I think you've covered like the important points for this show. I think if you take a step back, I think it's interesting how these things are coming about. It obviously the mayoral election obviously went against him, which was kind of a bit of a
Yes.
dent in the market, etc. And obviously that's why like you said, we had
That's
quite
what it was.
significant
Yeah.
market moves. Maybe a bit greater than what I was expecting. I think at one point the Argentinian index was off at 13% or something. I saw at one point.
Yeah, it was hit real hard.
So it let's see how it plays out. I think there's obviously more to go here, but well, I'm a bit kind of perplexed because Argentina on pretty much every metric is doing a lot better under Milei.
Yes,
Um, I can't really understand why he's being voted against for the old guard that were kind of putting him,
right. Is it a fact? It could be a factor. Go
go
ahead.
on, sorry.
Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, I wonder if it's influenced by the fact that his sister has that whole entire corruption
Well,
thing. You know what I
this
mean?
is
Like
it.
it, and it happened
This
in Buenos Aires. So,
Well,
uh,
hopefully, yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe this is it. Maybe putting too much weighting onto one result.
yes.
Um, but yeah, it'd be an
So we'll
interesting one
see.
to play out. Yeah,
In any event,
For the sake of
yeah.
Argentina themselves, I do hope that he stays in power because he's made some remarkable reforms.
Yes, yes. And so it'll be interesting just to see, if we're probably overreacting, you could say, but
Hope
definitely
so.
something that was a little bit of a change. One of those things where you don't really anticipate it, but a lot of folks out there may not even recognize that it may make a difference too in grain flow. Simply because everyone's so hell bent on, well, Argentina has the supplies. They do. They've removed their export tax. You know what I mean? These types of things. The farmer got a 3% raise yesterday on his soybeans, his or her soybeans, but they're still not, coming in and liquidating. So, that takes me to step number 2 or bullet point number 2, which I just kind of continue to talk about because the market continues to talk about it. Traders continue to talk about the lack of China demand out of the U.S. and how bad it is. And obviously there's kind of a little bit of a China needs fantasy versus reality. And we'll see. I mean, the Argentina thing's going to have a big effect on their ability to source bushels for reserves. That would be where you would see if the government were releasing a large amount of reserves or whatever, and they needed to restock. Typically, they come U.S. or Argentina, and so if you aren't able to buy a bunch of Argentina beans, it gets a little bit more tense as to, are you just going to liquidate your reserves and figure that you'll restock them when Trump's out of office, or what kind of is the
Right.
thought process there? There's approximately 17 million metric tons of soybeans, or over a half a billion bushel that China needs to source just to maintain their typical or average crush utilization rate, which is right now they're running at a higher level. We talked about that yesterday. They've been above 60% utilization for 26 weeks now, I believe it is, which is pretty exceptional. I think that's the longest stretch of over 60% we've seen since COVID. And I do think there's a bit of a paradigm shift in China that we've got to kind of grow accustomed to as well. China has a massive amount of crush capacity, and in the past, they've used it just to simply supply their domestic market. There's obviously demand for meal and oil around the world. Soybean oil especially is increased in value for just about everyone when it comes to blending into biofuels and all these other things. And maybe the US and the European Union don't want China, vegetable oils or feedstocks or whatever. But a lot of other people around the world will gladly take it, especially when you have, these B40, B50 sort of initiatives and some of these other things. And so it's going to be really interesting to see just kind of how right now what we're doing. I feel like we're playing chicken. Like we need to sell, 15 million, 17 million metric ton of soybeans to China, at least based on the balance sheet right now. We could discuss yields and things and all these other factors at hand until the cows come home. But right now, we've got to sell 15 to 17 million metric ton of beans to China. China just happens to need that many beans. When do they buy them? Do they buy them? How does it work? How does it all play out? I don't really know. Obviously, uh,
Honesty
you
is the
know,
best policy.
that's why, and it's going to be really fun to watch because cash grain doesn't move; it oozes, and it never moves how people expect it to. And so one of the things that I've been hearing a ton about in the Eastern Corn Belt is, oh, you've got to be really worried about physical deliveries against the November contract and some of these other things. As a farmer, no, you don't. As a farmer, yes, that could be negative on futures. So there's some of these other things. Your biggest worry right now when it comes to soybean basis is if you have to move bushels the next 6 to 8 weeks, where you're 6 weeks or so between now and the middle part of October, where you are going to put them. I guess that's 4 weeks now, geez Louise. But in any event, we're going to be harvesting soybeans. You're going to have a home for them before the end of October. When it comes to the delivery economics and some of these other things, that's more of something that will influence a merchandiser who's caught in a bad position. So if you're a
Right.
merchandiser, let's say, and you've aggressively been selling these beans because you think you're just going to be awash in them, you've been selling them into the processor, you've been selling them into the exporter, you've been booking your spreads, you've got yourself kicked out to, the March, May, July, whatever. If you don't have enough farmer selling on the front end, if you don't have enough shorts to offset some of this length that you put on, either by making sales or spreading your position out a little bit preemptively, potentially, it kind of puts you in a pickle. And so when we talk about large deliveries against the November contract, that's more of a concern a merchandiser should have. If they're sitting there just way too wide on basis and they don't get enough ownership, or if the production is lower or something like that. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff that really happens here over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, based on the weather and all of that. We are going to just rip when it comes to harvest for the most part. And it's going to be, it's going to be assholes and elbows. I'm sorry. It's just what it's going to be everywhere. Like, that's just where it's going to be. We're going to be struggling to put stuff away. But once it's put away, you bet your ass it's going to be hard to get it back out. And
Right.
so it's going to be really interesting. This whole entire dynamic, this whole entire idea of, oh my God, if China doesn't buy our beans, yeah, you're right. If China doesn't buy our beans, the market is now convincing you to figure out places to put it. Honey, move the minivan out of the garage. We're putting beans in the flat. Like, that is where we're at this point. But once they're put away, look out. I was looking this morning, just kind of running through Western Corn Belt bean demand shifts, and you're looking at upwards of 200 million bushels plus just in the Western Belt of soybean processing facilities, that need to be fed. You got another couple coming online here in the next little bit, both in the East and the Western Corn Belt. Like, you've got demand. We've got an excessive amount of crush demand, more than what we thought before. So all of these things are going to be fun to watch. The weather is going to be open. We'll be able to start seeing more in the way of harvest results. I'm hearing a lot of stories of, silage coming in, below expectations, yields coming in below expectations on some of this earliest run stuff. I'm not sure, if it's just a fluke, if it's just the people reporting to me, because they feel it's a safe space or something like that. But I have been seeing a lot of, like,
There you
this
go.
isn't quite what I expected.
Maybe this is what we need. Sorry if it's a bit loud in the background, but maybe this is what we need. Maybe we need like another kind of show, which is like like an agony aunt, but it's like Auntie
Right,
Ange, where
right.
farmers, producers, and buyers can come and is this is a safe space? Show me on the corn where it touched you.
Right, that's just it. That's my daily job, actually, is to provide the safe space for whoever wants
That
to reach out.
shoulder.
So, yes, that is me. So, but we'll see where we head. I mean, obviously, everyone's still of the mindset that lots of supply and, nowhere to put it, and lack of
Right.
China demand and all of these things. And so the only thing that's going to really solve that will be harvest and seeing what all is out there and getting a feel for real on overall demand. And so, yeehaw, giddy up. It'll come earlier this year. We'll know much quicker than a normal year.
Awesome. Well, Angie, thank you so much as always, my darling. I don't know about anyone else, but I always learn a lot from you. Big shout out to our listeners as well, especially my dear friend, my brother from another, Hubert, that I can see listening because, he won't like to tell many people, but he's actually in charge of quite a large arable farm in the UK. So
Look at
both sides,
him.
both sides of the pond are covered. There
Woohoo.
you go. But, whatever you guys are doing, stay safe, keep it tight, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.